we're a progressive metal band that doesn't really focus too much on fast playing or technique, more on moods and atmospheres, and therefore I think that we can be a band that could be listened to by people not really interested in progressive metal normally.
Just too blind to see the sentinels of chaos, for the truth shall set you free. The sentinels of chaos, and I walk my given path, and I walk on my behalf, and I speak when spoken to. Only the eyes of the bird.
Welcome to the Dreams of Consciousness podcast. If you'd be so kind, would you mind introducing yourself?
My name is Kjetil Nordhus. I'm the singer of Norwegian progressive metal band Green Carnation.
And Kjetil, how would you describe the music of Green Carnation?
Ooh. So straight on to the hardest question. I think we're a band within like the progressive metal genre, I guess. But I don't think we're just progressive metal. We're a band that's always been fond of exploring different atmospheres, and although we feel comfortable within melancholia and the darker parts of life, I do think there's quite a lot of beauty within our music. Although I think melancholia is a beautiful thing as well. We're a progressive metal band that doesn't really focus too much on fast playing or technique, more on moods and atmospheres, and therefore I think that we can be a band that could be listened to by people not really interested in progressive metal normally. I think we're a melodic band focusing on moods. Yeah.
As far as the progressive side of your sound and your progressive influences, is it important for you guys to evolve and change with every album?
We have been a band that's been doing that. For the people who don't know us, we came onto the international metal scene around year 2000, and we released 5 or 6 albums during our first active period, which ended in 2006. And then we came back in 2016. We released our first album for 13 years in 2020, and re-released our acoustic album in 22. And now, the next 2 years, the next year, we're gonna release 3 more albums. But I think we've been doing that on all albums until now. We broke through internationally with 1 Hour Song called Light Today, Day of Darkness in 2001. And after that, it was a bit of, what to do now, because we had done this very special project, and people got to know us through a 1 Hour Song. And then we needed to think about what the next step was going to be. So that was where we kind of went and tried to discover, different parts of the band's music. You could say maybe even different genres, or so the next album was more a progressive rock album, and then we developed from there. In 2005 or 6, we released an all acoustic album called The Acoustic Verses. But then again, I do think that like the people who know our sound would recognize the band quite fast, no matter which album, because I do think we have a DNA in the band that's it just sounds like us. And I think that's kind of a strength. It's the same people playing music. It's basically the same people who's written the music. So of course it would sound like it's the same band, no matter what kind of direction we've been leaning.
As far as the different influences that you guys have, would you say that you personally draw a lot of inspiration from classic heavy metal vocalists?
I think my 2 favorite vocalists would be Tom Waits and Mike Patton.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Which they're on. Well, there are some similarities between them, but they are two completely different singers. So I've been given the voice I have, and I try to use it as best possible for the music we write. Of course, I've been listening to a lot of hard rock and metal from the 70s, 80s, and 90s. I'm I'm born in 75, so I also experienced the grunge era, which I was kind of quite into, at least. So I don't think too much actively about being inspired by any other singers. I'm inspired by, of course, Tom Waits' ability to tell a story. I think that's like an inspiration. And although I'm not trying to sound like Tom Waits, which would be stupid, maybe not fitting our music at all. And also, of course, Mike Patton's ability to do everything he wants to do with his voice is, of course, a kind of an inspiration in order to try out some new stuff with my voice as well. Being 50 years old, that's not normally when you learn new things, but you could be inspired by trying, and sometimes it's going to work.
You gave a good overview of the band's history. Can you tell me a little bit about how you personally became involved with the band?
Yeah. It was actually right before Carnation was doing the Light of Day, Day of Darkness recording it must have been in like either 99 or early 2000s or early 2000. I got a telephone from Chort, which I only heard about before because he was kind of a legendary guy in our area in Norway, having been, in the inner black metal circle in the early days together with Euronymous and those people, and had played bass in Emperor and Satyricon and Einherjar, and so everybody kind of in the music environment in our hometown in Norway knew about him. I had only been, singing just for fun together with Jonathan, who's the drummer today. We did some songs together, and we had a Faith No More cover band even back then, me and Jonathan. So we go way back as well. But Jonathan didn't begin his career in Reincarnation before 2016. But of course, yeah, it's a small city, so everybody knows everybody almost. But yeah, so I was just asked if I wanted to join a band. There's a record contract there. We're going to do this ambitious project. He didn't tell me too much more than that. I think maybe I got some music on a CD or something with no vocals on. And I just said yes. And little did I know that it was going to be an album that was going to influence my life for the next 25 plus years. Little did I know that it's actually like a horribly ambitious project to do a 1 hour song just with one track. It's very little, it's not very commercially, well, it's not a wise commercial project, but that wasn't the point either. It was like when you watch a film, you don't start after 2/3 of the movie and then go back to the start and then see the end and then back to the start again. You need the entire thing in order to get it. But I didn't know anything about that when I accepted, and I would say luckily, because if I knew the level of ambition and how hard it would be to actually manage that, I think I would probably not have said yes. So luckily I didn't.
I mean, obviously we're all glad that you did say yes. What was the hardest part of approaching that album, that specific album, and having to come up with vocals for this, not just the length, it's almost like a classical piece where the repeating motifs, that come back throughout the album?
I think the hardest thing was that I'd never done it before. I had no experience in, well, even if I had done, but I didn't, but even if I had done a couple of regular albums before that, this would still be completely new challenge for me as a singer. But we worked in the studio of Endre Kirkesola, which he's here with me in the US today. We're going to play a concert tonight. He's in the band as the keyboard player and also the producer of the new albums. But what's the question again?
I'm just curious about in terms of writing lyrics and vocal patterns.
Luckily, I don't think anybody knew what we were doing, kind of. Well, nobody had done a 1 hour song before, so we just needed to try our best and to see where we ended up. There was a lot of work going on in the studio in order for the composition to end up like it did. But I wasn't involved too much with the actual, writing of the music. But when it came to like vocal lines and lyrics was like made along the way by Chort. He had like bits and pieces, quite a lot, but maybe 50% or 40% of the lyrics, and the rest was made on the way when we knew how things would sound. And also I worked quite closely with the producer Endre on the vocal lines, and also working with the lyrics in the studio, getting everything to fit and stuff. So maybe it was a good thing that it wasn't a regular song because we didn't have any rules on what kind of vocal lines and melodies that was going to be, we were going to make, because this was just, everything was so different on this project. So maybe that was a good thing, because if we had needed to make like catchy choruses and stuff, that would be a totally different challenge again. So I think that we were honest with each other that nobody's ever done this before. Let's just do our best. We were still like fairly young, so we didn't really know how hard it was, and maybe that was a good thing.
What was the connection between Chort and In the Woods? Because a lot of that lineup for the first album were
Yeah.
ex-members of In the Woods.
Reincarnation existed before In the Woods. We existed since the 1990 or something, I think. Like the band name, and it was a bunch of kids doing death metal. Like I think they made one demo cassette. It was way before all the guys in the band today started in the band. But there was a couple of guys who ended up in the Woods in the first edition of Reincarnation, very early days. And then when Short quit to begin doing black metal with Black Emperor and Satyricon and Einherjar, they formed In the Woods. So, which also did some demos in the 90s. And then when Reincarnation came back together, or Short like gave life again to Reincarnation for the very first album, it was natural for him to invite a couple of those guys into the studio to do the very first album. And then when he started to work with the idea that eventually became Light of Day, Day of Darkness, In the Woods already existed as a band, but they helped him out on the first album. But I think Short felt that project needed some other musicians, and let In the Woods be In the Woods, and Reincarnation could become Reincarnation as we know today. So actually from Light of Day, Day of Darkness, and like if we see the lineup today, we're going to do this gig today, we only have a different drummer from 2000 to 2025. The rest of the guys are the same. So that's kind of incredible, I think.
Yeah.
There's been some changes along the way. One guitarist has been out for a couple of years. Short's been away for a little while. He's back in the band now, but now Henrik Kirkesola is back on keys. So we're basically kind of the same band today as in 2000.
So at the time that we're having this conversation, you'll be releasing a new album in a few days called A Dark Poem Part 1, The Shores of Melancholia, which will be coming out through Season of Mist on September 5th. Tell me a little bit about this album and your intentions for this album.
Just to explain about the entire trilogy idea, because it's, as you said, part 1 out of 3 parts. The 2 next albums are going to be out next year in 2026. And actually the idea of doing a trilogy was born, I think, when trying to figure out what on earth to do after Light of Day, Day of Darkness, which was such a special project. People knew us from being the band with a 1-hour song. What on earth are you going to do after that? Some asked us, are you going to do another hour-long song? But of course, we didn't want to do that. But we ended up, as I said earlier, exploring different parts of, like, different sides of Reincarnation, you could say, after that. And so, but eventually then we didn't do a trilogy in our first period. But when getting back together in 2016 for the Light of Day, Day of Darkness 15 anniversary shows, we didn't decide before that we were going to continue as a band after that. The deal between the band members was that we're going to do 2016, do those Light of Day, Day of Darkness shows, and then discuss what to do. Maybe it was fun, but we needed to do something else away from each other, or maybe we wanted to continue, and luckily we ended up on the last conclusion. We wanted to continue as a band and make new music, and that's when the idea of a trilogy came back up. What are we going to do now? We always gave ourselves some huge challenges through our career, and we thought the time was right now to start working with a trilogy. So we talked to different labels, and when talking to Season of Mist, they really wanted to do this together with us. So we signed a 5-album deal with them in 2017, giving ourselves time to compose the enormous amount of music that's on the 3 new albums. So we did these 2 releases in 20 and 22 in order to give us time to finish A Dark Poem. So we're here now after having composed and recorded for 7 years. So it's a special feeling that it's at last going to be not only for us, but for all the people who want to listen to it in just a few days. So it's really exciting times. At some moments during the period of composing, I wouldn't say we lost belief, but the amount, like standing in the bottom of a mountain looking up to this enormous thing. It kind of felt like that sometimes, but now we're, I don't know, down on the other side of the mountain, and we're just looking forward to sharing it. Yeah.
So, am I understanding you correctly that the music for the next two albums is not just written but also recorded?
Everything is written and recorded.
Oh wow!
So, and I think album 2 already is in being mixed, and album 3 is going to be ready for that when album 2 is finished. So it's a really good situation to be in. I'm so happy that we did it like that, because now for us it's about rehearsing the songs, playing them live, sharing the music to people also through playing live through 2026 and 27. So I don't know if it would be possible for us to be in the studio recording part 2 on the same time as promoting part 1 live. So I'm just, really happy. Maybe it's because we're getting old, but it's a really well-planned project. And I don't think we could have managed to do what we've managed to do if it wasn't for the preparations. Normally, in our early career, we'd have a great idea, and it was 99% of the times it was a great idea, but it's a little bit too late now. So we didn't want anything of that now. So everything's been planned really well and been planned together with the label and everything, and which makes it even, we've been waiting for this exact date for, I think we've known the release date for 2 years. So of course it feels strange when we're here at last.
I'd like to ask about the way you guys compose songs.
Mm.
Does it start with one or two people, or do you guys write as a group?
All the songs on the three new albums are written by myself and Stein Roger Sordal, the bass player. He's also playing guitar, lots of guitars on the new albums. He can play keys, and he can do anything. So normally we would go away to house in the mountains that he owns and just lock the doors and stay there for a few days. We've been doing that maybe 10 or 20 times during the period of writing. And normally he would have some musical ideas and we would develop them together. I'd have more of a maybe arranger, maybe like the structure of songs is maybe I don't play the guitars and the basses and stuff like that, but I think I might have like a good ear for structure and details and transitions and everything. So we've worked together. Every song has been, there's like between 15 and 25, 26, 27 different versions of all the songs on all the three new albums, because with small and bigger developments. So we didn't, release we didn't finish a song before we were 100% satisfied with it. And that's also something I learned eventually, that the difference between, say, 92 and 100% is maybe as much work as the first 92%. But we didn't want anything to be less than 100%, like for our own, we didn't want to release or record a song that we were 100% happy with. So that's why it's taken so much time. So that's how it worked. And he's the main lyricist, Sten Roger, the bass player. Of course, I need to work a lot with the lyrics in order for me to sing them. So luckily I know him really well. So I kind of understand very quickly what it means for him. And I try to adopt, the feelings and what's been written about into my life. And I feel also that the lyrics are mine, even though he had the original ideas for the lyrics. So kind of that's how we've been working on all the new songs on the three new albums, but also, of course, the Shores of Melancholia.
Does Stain demo stuff in like Pro Tools or another DAW before the band hears them?
No, well, he would maybe record some ideas, but then he presented to me and we developed the songs together. And then when we have a song that's finished, like with structure and everything, we of course share it with all the other guys, and then we bring the other guys into the demo studio to like we play V drums, so we can have something that's a little bit more alive than programmed drums at least. So we develop the drums together with Jonathan, or still at the home studio, and also with keys and solo guitars and stuff. We do that before going to the studio, but then again, when going to the studio, we try to be open for changes even then, because then the producer is there and he's got new ears on it, and sometimes he can come with feedback that we haven't thought about. So that's sometimes, a hard battle in the studio, because, you get emotionally involved with the demos and then suddenly there's going to be some changes. So, but I think that's a healthy part of using somebody else from, well, now he's in the band, but when we went into the studio, he hadn't been there to develop the demos. So, but then again, we chose Endre Kirkesol as a producer because we know that the feedback he's gonna bring in is gonna be for the best of the songs. Yeah.
Can you tell me about the lyrical concepts on this album, and maybe, if you don't mind teasing, the way it stretches over the three albums?
Yeah. It's not a story that starts on the first song, like some concept albums would start on the first song lyrically and then be like a story and what stuff happen and then it finishes. It's not that kind of album, but we do deal with many of the same questions and feelings, and maybe it's a result of becoming like a grown-up person. I think many people will recognize, the feeling of alienation. Everything around us just flies by. You lose control over your own life because you're a part of something that's moving in an extreme like direction, even when it comes to, the AI revolution. You don't know really what's true and not anymore. You don't know what's artificial, what's been made of human beings. And for people who grew up with being able to understand things around you, not being able to do that feels like, I think it's really difficult. So there's a lot of worries during all three albums. And of course, you look at the situation in the world today. It's not necessarily worse than any, but you see it all the time. Wherever you look, you see, what's happening in Gaza, for example. It's no time for rest at all. Sometimes I just want to throw away everything and then move to the top of a mountain or to some place in the mountain and don't have contact with the rest of the world, because then I would feel in control. And I think many of the feelings we're discussing on 3 albums are the lack of control and how it makes you feel in your role in society, but also at home, with your children growing up. You cannot even control them anymore. They send them into a world that is really just total chaos. So I think we needed 3 albums in order to kind of enlighten those kinds of things in the lyrics. And maybe it's helped us a little bit with, processing some of the feelings that we have. But yeah, so that's in short what it's about. And I do think many people can relate to that. Well, at least I think so.
So by the time people hear this episode or watch it on YouTube, A Dark Poem Part 1, The Shores of Melancholia, will be out through Season of Mist Records. Kjetil, please tell everyone how they can order the album. What's the best way to get it?
Well, if you want to order it directly from the band, we have a Big Cartel page that's called Official Green Carnation on Big Cartel. And then we would have like exclusive signed stuff that you cannot find anywhere else, which is really nice. We have some exclusive shirt designs and stuff, but also, of course, in all the, like on Bandcamp and through Season of Mist, of course, you can order both in the US and in Europe. So it would be possible to get your hands on the Shores of Melancholia if you want to. We'll continue working with Big Cartel shop in order to have cool exclusive stuff. So if people want that, they can visit us there. But we're extremely happy for all kinds of support.
Do you want to say anything about the 3 vinyl versions that Season of Mist created for this album?
Oh, yeah. Again, it's like we're around 50 years old now. So, there's also a motivation for ourselves, very like personal motivation for having cool stuff that you've done yourself. So when Season of Mist asked us if we wanted, marble colored vinyls and stuff, of course we wanted that, and we want to have it ourselves. And of course we have experienced that like people want those special, it's really, really nice vinyls. So I think it's just like a bonus for us that these things exist. Of course, you would be able to buy like a regular vinyl as well, which is also really, really nice. So yeah, it's just an extra motivation, I think.
And if people want to follow Green Carnation online, what's the best way to get updates about the band?
I would say, being almost 50 years old, we're more active on Facebook than on Instagram. So following Green Carnation from day to day, I think that like Green Carnation Norway on Facebook would be the best, but also Green Carnation on Instagram, you would be able to follow us quite well.
Very cool. Thanks so much, Kjetil.
Cheers.
Takk så mycket.
Thank you.